Hey guys, it's Jewelyn. Welcome back to my channel. And I know I've been missing. First off, I'm sorry from the vlog channel, and I think it's because I've been really focused on growing my main channel. But I am here and I wanted to go ahead and do a smoothie talk, or a acai bowl talk, smoothie in a bowl. I just made this beautiful acai bowl, and it's acai bowl season finally, which I made my first acai bowl over the weekend, and it's beautiful, sunny in the 70s post workout between two jobs. Let's just say that since February up until now, and it's now mid-June, I am been going through a lot. If you guys keep up with my Instagram or on my main YouTube channel, in February I went home to Hawaii, and I've been having a really hard time to put up that vlog because I did film for that one. I might put it up, I'm not sure, but that trip was basically me going home to put my dog down of 18 years. And that was like the last time I see my grandpa too. So I don't know if I want to put the vlog up. I want to, I'll probably get to it. But I just kind of been putting it off on the side because I'm having a hard time just with that whole trip. No. On the topic of going home to put my dog down for 18 years, when I left Hawaii 9 years ago, I think 2009, 2008, I have two dogs. They're both gone now. And it was Princess and Sensi. And I had them both from 6 weeks old. When I moved away from Hawaii, I let my grandparents, my mom's parents, take care of them. They raised me. And they're still in my hometown in Hilo. And I would go home maybe 2-3 times a year ever since I left 9 years ago, and spend the holidays with them, my birthday in August, because my grandma and I share the same month and we're like 3 days or so apart from each other. And I would always go home. That was like my tradition, you know, it was to go home for the holidays, for my grandma's birthday, and then maybe like some other random trip in between all of that. And that's just been like my life the last 9 years now. This was a very last minute trip in February, and my grandpa really took it hard because he was 82 years old, and my dogs and his dog, they have a little sausage dog, was his life. He just stayed home and just took care of them, and he didn't even like going anywhere. And he's a homebody, very nice guy, and just kind of was stuck in his little routine where he got up, made his breakfast, take care of the dogs. He used to feed the neighborhood cats, and he's been doing that in every single house we lived in ever since I was born, like feeding the neighborhood cats. Like that's his thing until this day. And now that my grandpa's gone, the cats still come around like looking for him. But we kept my dog an extra 3 days, like, because I knew when I went home that it was time to put her down. Like literally I caught a red eye and I canceled all of my jobs in Las Vegas and LA, and I had to go home to put her down because actually August of last year I thought I was going to put her down, and then she ended up sticking around for several months. No, my grandpa wasn't prepared for the news. Basically he told the doctor he wanted a couple more days. So my vet was like, okay, just for a couple more days, but she's pretty much not walking anymore, not eating. And it was so hard to go home to see her like that, and I cried my heart out when I seen her skin and bones. It was definitely her time to go. But for my grandpa, we took her home for an extra 3 days. And I think like now that it's June, mid-June, I can talk about it now since it's been since February since this went down. Whereas back then, guys, like I could not talk about it and like be okay like this, you know what I mean? And so I think this is like a perfect time for me to do a smoothie talk life update, because I can kind of talk about my grandpa's passing without falling apart, and then my dog's passing, and it's kind of where I'm at right now in life. So I think today's the day, and I want to get this video up today so it can be almost like real time. So we took her home, and basically it was like hospice in my house, my grandparents' house. So for 3 days, now I have this tradition where I take my dogs and their dog to my childhood park. It's called Liliuokalani Gardens, and It's a beautiful park, and I grew up going to that park. So being able to take my dogs and their dog there, like every day when I'm home, is like our routine. Whether it's in the morning or in the evening, you just never know because Hilo is always raining, and sometimes it's not raining at our house, but it's raining down there. You just never know, and that's kind of how island life is. But that was like our thing. So prior to us going to the vet, I took her there, and I already knew in my heart that was like probably her last time that she was going to see the park. And actually, like, I had to carry her, put her on a blanket, and face her towards the ocean. And I just cried and cried, and I held her because I had a feeling that was like the last time I was going to take her to the park. I thought I was going to put her down. But we took her home. The vet said to feed her baby food. And then I actually thought about it because I was talking to my mom about it. And I went back later that afternoon, and I sat for over an hour to talk to him about getting her on IV fluids for the 3 days, so at least she would have fluids because she wasn't drinking anymore. And finally, I got the fluids, and it was like hospice in my home. I had to make sure the the catheter wouldn't come out, or no, there was no catheter. It was like a needle. So it basically just kind of floated, and I had to give it sub-Q. And yeah, I had to do that, fluids, 24/7 times 3 days, and then try to force feed her eating baby food. And guys, let me tell you, if you ever had to do that for your pet, that is like the hardest thing to do, is see your beloved pet go through that. And I did it just for my grandpa because I was ready to put her down. Like in my mind, as I was flying home on a red eye, like I knew I had to build a tough skin and put my dog down. Now, a couple years ago, I think I was living in Las Vegas at the time. I had to do the same thing with my dog Princess. The only thing was I asked my mom to take her to the vet that night while I was catching the red eye. And then when I arrived to Hilo in the morning, I went to the vet, held her for maybe 10 minutes or so, cried my heart out, and then we put her down. So I just went to the vet and seen her there and put her down. This was a whole different story. I had to carry her myself into the vet and put her down. So it was really bad. So finally, on the third day, all of my family came and said their goodbyes, and it was really like emotional. Everybody was crying. We held hands and surrounded her and prayed for her. I'll never forget, and I'm gonna try to not cry as I talk about this, but I'll never forget my grandpa holding my dog and crying his heart out because he had a hard time to say goodbye to her. And he didn't want to go to the park this time around because he went to the park with us on the first time I got home because he didn't think that she was going to go down. And he's like, I can't go to the park. I can't go to the vet. Like, he held her to the last minute, and I still remember pulling her off of him as he was holding her head crying. And carried her away from him, and I put her in the back seat of the car. Whew. And he looked into the back seat, and I rolled the window down, and he just cried his heart out. And I remember him holding Lucy, or his little sausage dog, in the driveway and like crying his heart out as I drove off with my dog and my grandma. We went to the park one last time. I set her up to face the ocean, and I just held her in my arms, and I just told her that, like, thank you for loving mommy for 18 years and for being part of our family. Oh my God, I thought I could hold it together. It's been since February, but just talking about it, I think, makes it seem like it's just yesterday. And I think now with my grandpa's passing, it's even more emotional. So yeah, that was that. I took her to the park one last time, and then from there I went and walked her into the vet, and I carried her in, and that was like the worst thing ever. I don't wish that upon anybody. This dog's been in my life for more than half of my life, and we grew up together and it's been through so many things together, from my 7-year relationship to being single, and to also like living on Oahu with her, and then sending her back to the Big Island when I moved to California. And just being my grandpa's support system while I was away, because that dog was like a part of me, and my grandparents raised me, so it was like a part of me was still there. And I think that's another reason why he got so attached too. But yeah, I put her down, and that was that, and I left and I went home. Look, guys, my smoothie acai bowl is melting in front of me. And that was that. Until this day, prior to my grandpa passing, he would tell me all the time on the phone, like, thank you, babe, for coming home. Like, if it wasn't for you to come home, we wouldn't have those last few days with her. You came home just an amount of time. And he had a hard time putting the bed away, her collar away. He would always like see her in the house walking around or outside in the front yard, and he would just cry his heart out to me. And that was so hard to hear him cry all the time. Now, my grandpa and I are best friends. He raised me, my grandparents raised me, and we talk on the phone every day. And he was really having a hard time with the loss. And then now, in May, on a side note, my mom's Yorkie from her second marriage randomly passed away. I think he had a heart attack in the middle of the night walking to his water bowl, because that's where he was found. So he got also cremated as well. My dog got cremated, so now there's 3 dogs cremated in Hilo at my grandparents' house, which I'll have to bring up when I go home in 2 weeks. So I'll be bringing back a lot of ashes, but my 2 dogs' ashes is there, and then my mom's Yorkie's ashes is there. I'm bringing it back up. And fast forward after all that, on May 11 now, it's been a month and a day since my grandpa left us. Whew. I miss him so much. It was just moving on to the topic with my grandpa passing. And let me know down in the comments below, like, how do you handle losing somebody just kind of out of the blue? Because this is the first time this has happened to me, and also the first time since, like, quote unquote, a parent of mine has passed away. And like, now going home is going to be so different, side note, because now he's always there to pick me up. Now he's not there anymore. My dogs are no longer there anymore. So home, which was my grandparents and my dog, is no longer there anymore. And that was kind of like something special to me, to be able to go home to my hometown where I grew up, to still have home there. And I will be moving my grandma up to Las Vegas, and she'll be visiting me 1 trip a month as I go back and forth to Santa Monica in September. Now, my grandma will be 75 in August. She's lived in Hilo her whole life. So this is going to be a big change for her, but there will be no longer a home, if you know what I mean. There will be no more holidays to go home and be with my family, my dog. So this is going to be the first holiday that I won't be going home to Hilo to be with my family. Although I do have family on all of the islands, and I try to see them whenever I go home. But my main reason to go home is to see my grandparents and my dogs, which doesn't exist anymore. So that already in itself is very emotional to think about. I have to come up with new traditions. And also, the volcano is taking over our island. And I cried so much a week ago. There's a little beachy town that I grew up going to, and we always stayed out there in a vacation home, and hung out with the turtles and swimming with the turtles in the backyard. It's this place called Kapoho, and it's like a super amazing gem on the Big Island. But the lava flow had covered that, and it's no longer there anymore. And it just in general, I spent a lot of time in Kapoho, even in the middle of the night while I was in high school, hanging out with like my friends. And it's so devastating to think that the lava took it. So there's over 20 fissures opened up on the island since May 3rd. So May 3rd, the eruption started to happen. Now, it's been flowing since I was born, but like chill flow. But since like the crazy eruption, it's been happening since May 3rd. And then May 11, my grandpa passed away. So our island is just like crazy. Things are not the same. I'm actually like nervous to go home because of just the physical change of the island, and people losing their homes. And I don't know what the island is going to look like. This volcano and all these fissures are not stopping anytime soon. and it's very toxic to breathe. I'm just kind of worried about my grandma. All I know is, guys, I hope that this volcano does not end up reaching in Hilo, because you never know where the fissures are going to open up, and you can never be too sure. I know a lot of people who got affected by the flow, who lost everything that they have, and there's hundreds now of homes that are gone. Never thought one day the lava would come and take everything that they have. So it's a really, really sad time right now for my island, and my heart goes out to all of my big island people out there that has got affected by the flow. It's real life, real talk, and such a sad time right now for the island. But backtracking to my grandpa's passing, so it was just really random, guys. And I talk to my grandpa every day, and I always call him when I go to Las Vegas. And I called him when I was almost in Las Vegas, and he didn't answer. So the morning that he passed, I just arrived to my mom's house in Las Vegas. Not even 5 minutes, my mom came home. She brought us pizza from our pizza shop, and we're never together, my mom and I, because of our schedules and the fact that I don't live there. But I just arrived to Las Vegas, and she just got home 5 minutes later with pizza. And we sat down in the patio, and she's like, oh, let's take a selfie with the pizza and send it to my grandma. I said, okay, fine. 2 minutes later, she's like, oh, your grandma's calling, pick the phone up. So I was like, oh, hey, grandma. And she's like, your grandpa is not breathing. And I just lost it. It was so out of the blue. Like, he was fine the day before I talked to him. He was fine that morning of, like, no signs of him leaving us anytime soon. My grandpa is 82. He's going to be 83 end of December. There was no signs of him, like, leaving us anytime soon. As far as I'm concerned, like, he was so healthy. Well, besides the fact that he had a lot of respiratory problems, and I told him a month ago when my grandma was up here that he needed to take care of this cough because he had fluids in his lungs, and he's like old school, no, I'm gonna drink ginger tea. And then also, besides having fluid in his lungs, a couple days before his passing, he had a flare-up of pedal edema, and it flared up all the way up his legs. And I think my uncle had seen it and mentioned, like, hey, Dad, look at your legs. But he's like, oh, I'll put my feet up. But at 82 years old, when you're going through these health conditions, you can't self-diagnose yourself. And I've been in healthcare for over 10 years. And I think seniors, and especially like people living on the island, they think they can do these home remedies. And I think it was like, as I processed my grandpa's passing, I think it boiled down to a bunch of things, and it just kind of all lined up, and it was like a domino effect. So my grandpa had a lot of fluid in his lungs for over a month, I want to say, and he wasn't taking care of that. I know, like, a couple years ago, I took him to the doctor. My grandpa doesn't like going to the doctors, and he ended up getting an inhaler for his respiratory problem, but he doesn't like using it. Supposedly, he was on a diuretic, but his doctor discontinued it 2 weeks before his passing. I think that's a big mistake, because if he was still taking the diuretic, they would have helped him with his fluids in his lungs to help him breathe better. Now, if you have pulmonary edema, which is fluid in the lungs, you can't be in the hot sun. You need to exercise regularly. You can't have salty foods. That's kind of like the main things I think that happened to my grandpa. He didn't take care of the fluid in his lungs. And when you're overexerting yourself, what had happened was, I can't believe I'm telling this story and like holding myself together. I think it's been a month now, and I finally feel like okay to talk about it. He decided to do the lawn. The grass hasn't been mowed in over, like, it was hardcore raining in Hilo. If you guys are familiar with Hilo, it rains a lot, for over a week. And it was finally sunny, and he told my grandma and my auntie, I'm gonna do the lawn. And my uncle actually wanted to come and like cut back the grass a little bit with a weed whacker because it was so tall, but he was very hard-headed, and he's like, no, I'm gonna do it, it's my exercise. My grandpa's a strong guy. He loves lifting weights, he loves working out, he's so young at heart, and even if he's in his 80s, he always thinks he's like 50, and I think that's where I get my like fit side of me, is that he still loved to like do his weights and all of that. I think that was like, he's so cool. And that day he told my grandma And my auntie, side note now, my grandma was in Las Vegas and Santa Monica for 3 months with us. About a month and a half in Vegas and a month with me. And she was actually in the hospital. And I'll talk about that in a little bit so I can keep on the topic of my grandpa. And she was in the hospital, and I think that really stressed out my grandpa. And then a week after she came home, finally he passed. So I think he was waiting for her, you know? And when he decided to do the yard, my auntie and my grandma was like, okay, fine, because you always take breaks. Not a big deal, right? So finally, Abby's below me here. Finally, my grandma was like, okay, they're going to go run errands. They're going to go grocery shopping. They'll be back. Bring back lunch for my grandpa. They didn't think of anything, you know? As they were away in those 2 hours, and they're always home together. That's the crazy part too. My grandpa's never home alone. He was fine the morning of. Like, ate his breakfast, did his normal routine, fed his little sausage dog, fed the cats. Like, nothing crazy, right? But when he was mowing the lawn in the hot sun, now think about it. I don't know about even the air, you know, with the volcano already erupting. I don't know how toxic it is in Hilo at the time, but my grandpa had tons of fluid in his lungs, so that was like a big no-no. When you have pulmonary edema, you can't be in the hot sun. He was in the hot sun. You need to also stay off of salty foods. And if you guys are from Hawaii, my grandpa was a huge fan of eating Vienna sausage and spam, eggs and rice. Like, that was his thing. And we kind of let him do that, you know, like in your 80s, eat whatever you want. And he's been doing it for years, and that's what makes him happy. So my grandpa wasn't eating healthy with his medical condition. So the salty foods, and then overexerting and pushing that lawnmower with the long grass, and he's not really doing a lot of cardio every day. So like, he should have been, you know, with pulmonary edema, you have to exercise regularly. So I think it was a series of events that kind of just all lined up to just kind of make the event of him passing happen. So when you have pulmonary edema, if it's not taken care of, you can get respiratory failure and death. And that's what happened to my grandpa. I know it. Apparently, there was a man on a motorcycle. And if you see my grandparents' house, there's 2 big tangerine trees. You probably see it in pictures that I post up or vlogs. Nobody really looks at our house. They drive past really fast. Where my grandpa had fell and passed, it was behind the tangerine tree. Between the tangerine trees and the house. Very dark place. There was a motorcyclist that had biked past and seen my grandpa on the ground and the lawnmower up. He stopped. He went back. And by then, my grandpa wasn't breathing. Now, I can't believe I'm telling this and still holding myself here. My emotions. And so he called 911. But the problem is, guys, is that we don't know how long my grandpa was like that and not breathing. And like, till this day, it just makes me so upset and hard to accept that he was home by himself and there was nobody to physically run up to him as this happened to try to save him. And I just kind of think in my mind, like, what was my grandpa thinking as this happened when he was home by himself and went through this alone? And by the time the ambulance came, it was like too late because we don't know how long my grandpa wasn't breathing already. Now, the crazy thing is my grandma and my auntie arrives at the same time as the ambulance already has my grandpa in the ambulance but still in front of the house. Imagine if they had came home a couple minutes early and found my grandpa in the yard. Or imagine if they came home a couple minutes late and my grandpa was in the hospital and he wasn't home. They'd be like, what happened to my grandpa, right? Timing. So imagine what my grandma feels like, you know, after being in a hospital for a couple of days. Basically, she had a bleeding ulcer. Never been in the hospital before. It was her first time besides breast cancer surgery. I'll finish the topic of my grandma's thing in a little bit. It was a lot for her to take in that her husband was found not breathing. And my grandma and my auntie went up to the hospital. I lost it, and I remember being in my room in Las Vegas upstairs crying my heart out. And I think till this day, even when I went the following trip after my grandpa's passing, to just be in my bedroom, like, I can't help but cry because I like these memories, these flashbacks of me sitting on the phone listening to his code blue in the ER for an hour of them trying to bring him back, like I can still replay it in my mind. I've been in healthcare for over 10 years. I rotated in the ER, and I know exactly what's happening just from hearing like the machines and all of that. I was able to talk to the ER doctor over speakerphone and ask questions and stuff like that. But basically what had happened was he wasn't already breathing on his own. They got a pulse, they lost it. They worked on him. They got it, they lost it. After the fourth time, his pulse just stopped and they called time. The whole time in that hour, I was telling my grandma, how are you doing? Are you okay? And I was like bawling my eyes out, you know, and I was like losing it. And my grandma was so strong, and I can't believe how strong she was when she's like, oh, I have to be strong for your grandpa. I have to be strong for your grandpa. And my grandma's never been, you know, in a hospital setting, like never experienced anything like that. And she just was in the hospital a week before in Las Vegas, and like, God bless her for being so strong. And I think maybe it was a good thing that there was no FaceTime. Like my auntie or my grandma doesn't have an iPhone, so I couldn't visually see my grandpa in the ER. But just to hear it, I think kind of gave me a little closure, because I know in my heart that at least they tried to save him. And, you know, hearing my auntie say like, please daddy, come back. Like I can still hear that. And another thing too is like my auntie had took a picture of my grandpa, you know, in the ER like that, and I just told her like, please don't do that. Like I don't need to see my grandpa like that. I want to be able to remember him for all of the memories he gave me, including in February. And in February too, like it wasn't a happy time because I went home to take care of my dog, so there was really no happy moments that trip. It was him crying. And even the same thing too then, my auntie had took a lot of pictures back then in February of me taking care of my dog, and I like, I don't need that, you know, like I don't want to remember my dog sick. I don't need to have that in my phone. I just want to remember her, and I printed pictures of her healthy in remembrance of her. But my auntie had sent that picture of me of my grandpa in his gown, like in the ER, you know, in cold blue, and I can't believe I seen that picture. My bowl is melting. That was that. It's been 30 days or so since my grandpa passed, 1 month passing. And I think it's hard for me and my family, especially me and my mom, to find some kind of balance in my heart to accept this, because we're not physically there and we're so used to talking to him every day. And like all of a sudden he's not picking up the phone. And I still have some rough moments, like when I call home and they have a landline and he's not there to answer, and it freaks me out and I start crying. But in this past month, I've had so many incidents where if I'm home by myself and not doing my plants or working out or taking care of Ebby or dancing, and I'm just like a silent moment, I like cry. Every time I'm driving, I'm always calling home and talking to him, telling him about my day. He'll stay on the phone with me until I get home in the house to Ebby, you know? And I just think about him and I start crying because I can't call him anymore. So it's just been like a really tough month of trying to accept his passing, being out here alone in California, not in Hawaii. So a lot of my family has been getting together, and a lot of my uncles too flew in from Oahu to see my grandpa after 3 weeks before he got cremated. And I'm like, my grandma couldn't go in after 3 weeks of him being refrigerated. She stayed in the parking lot in the car with their dog, their little sausage dog. She's like, I can't see your grandpa like that. Like, but my uncles needed closure to see him. I don't think, guys, like I would want to see my grandpa 3 weeks after his passing. Like, I don't know. Part of me was upset that I wasn't home for that. I just want to remember him for the memories that I had. But anyway, that is what's going on. I have to create the celebration of life video. I have 2 weeks to do it. I'm kind of avoiding it because I just don't want to cry. And I'm also creating the program. I wanted to go home in May, right when this happened, but I couldn't afford to go home twice, like go home in May and then go home end of June for his celebration. And it's like 7 weeks after his passing, but my mom wanted it 7 weeks after for X, Y, and Z reasons. So I'm doing a combined trip. I'm going home a week early to help my grandma pack and move out, because we are moving them out of their house of 20 years, which is very emotional too, right? And I'm gonna spend time with her, and she's been really patient and waiting for me to come there, and I have to go through everything. I have a lot of things also like from my childhood that's been in the house that I need to decide what I want to do. But it's gonna be really tough because my grandpa won't be there to pick me up. I have to go through everything in the house, physically pack my grandma up, say goodbye to the house that they've been living at for 20 years, which I have so many memories. And also too, I didn't see my dog's box of her ashes because it arrived when I was already back in Santa Monica. So I'll be like, it'll be really, really hardcore emotional, guys. Like, I'll do a smoothie talk out there, and I plan on filming too when I'm there, a travel with Jewelyn episode for this channel. And that's kind of it. I haven't seen my family in a long time. It's kind of like awful, right, that you don't see your family unless it's a funeral. But I'm going to be seeing all of my uncles and my aunties and my cousins, and I'm really looking forward to having some kind of closure. Like right now, my grandma can't be in the house because she sees the yard and like she starts like freaking out. She can't be in the house by herself. She can't like have the place quiet, and every time she looks at the yard, she thinks about him there. So I can only imagine what my grandma's going through. You know, they've been together for 50 plus years. I remember going home to Hawaii a couple years ago, belly dancing for their 50th wedding anniversary, and it's crazy, you know, how this is. And I said this too in an Instagram post, that this is my year of change. Like everything, I'm teaching Pilates now in LA, and this is so new to me, being certified. So it's like I have a life change here, and then like my whole life change in Hawaii with no dogs and grandpa and like no home anymore. But I'll go home, you know. I don't think as much as 2-3 times anymore, because like my grandma will be up here in Las Vegas. But that's about it as far as for my grandma. Quick story time on her. It was the morning that we were gonna go to Las Vegas, and I came home from my day job here. I leave work early for those days, and I found her in front of my house here. If you guys watch my channel, I have a little walkway right here in front of my house, but my grandma was slumped over with Ebby's doggy bag, poop bag in her hand. She was pale white, and I like rushed in. I was like, Grandma, what's going on? And she couldn't talk. The dog bag dropped, and I like put her arm around me. She's like, I drank orange juice. She's diabetic, but problem is, guys, is that she doesn't check her blood sugar because, I don't know, something happened to her machine, and she just thinks that she can drink orange juice and she'll be fine. So I was thinking, okay, maybe she had low blood sugar. We don't know, right? Put her arm around me, walked her to the car. We had all of our things ready, right? I loaded it up, locked the door, talked to her. She was all right on the drive. When we got there, she just kind of sat downstairs in the TV room. And then late at night while I was at work, my mom sent me a picture of her having some tea and some snacks. And okay, fine. When I got home from work, she was already sleeping in my bed. I get home like 11:30 at night from work there. Well, follow up the next morning, my mom woke me up. She's like, your grandma. And we found my grandma slumped over on the toilet paper in her hand, like facing forward, pale white. And she couldn't respond to us. I was like, Grandma, follow my finger. She couldn't do that. She couldn't answer back to me. I was like, we need to call 911. And I flipped out. And we slowly walked her downstairs. She was still in her pajamas. We don't know how long she was sitting on that toilet. The ambulance came, rushed her to the nearest hospital, and she was there for 4 days. Come to find out, she had a bleeding ulcer, and she needed blood transfusion 4 liters. It was so bad, guys. Like, I went to church because we were supposed to go to church together. She goes to church with me in Vegas, and the church prayed over me and told me I need to go pray over her. And that was when I lost it, as I couldn't hold my emotions. And I was like, Grandma, I need to pray over you. And I'm like, I just want you to come home. I want you to stop bleeding. But that was like the first time my grandma's ever been in the hospital. Besides her getting recently diagnosed from breast cancer in the fall, she went into surgery to get a lumpectomy. She's cancer free now. We caught it in time. But this was like the first time ever she ever was admitted to the hospital. So that was like a really crazy thing, like to end a 3-month trip up here in the hospital for 4 days, and then 3 days after I ended up staying an extra day out there because of her. And then 3 days later she flew home to Hilo, and then a week later my grandpa passed. So it's just been really crazy, guys. And I think that's all I want to share for now, because this video is super long and now my bowl is melted. But I didn't cry as much as I thought I would, so I want to give myself credit for that. And just let me know down in the comments below, like, have you ever experienced what I'm experiencing? You know, it was just so sudden, and I know my grandpa was 82, but there was like no signs of him leaving us anytime soon, and I think that's what makes it so hard, you know. And with my dogs passing and not having a home anymore, so we'll see what I end up doing for Christmas. Obviously it'll probably be in Las Vegas, or I usually travel abroad if I don't go home to Hawaii, so maybe I might do that. But that's about it. You'll be seeing more of my grandma on my main channel. We're going to be doing more sewing. We do a lot of belly dance costumes together, which is really fun for us. We spent a bunch of trips going down to downtown LA Fashion District and getting all these things for our costume making. We actually made 4 costumes. I post pictures of me in it on my Instagram at _Jewelyn if you're interested. I do costume design as well, so we'll be doing that. She'll be on my main channel doing planting videos, and you know, that's what's going to be happening in the near future. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap up the video here because it's way too long. My bowl is now melted and I need to head to my other studio in a little bit. But I hope you guys enjoyed this smoothie talk and kind of like a life update and kind of where I'm at right now and why I've been missing on the vlog channel. I'll try to be better about this channel. But let me know down in the comments below if you ever experienced what I'm going through, and being away from home for 9 years and dealing with this is like rough, you know. But I'm here, I'm working in 2 states, multiple jobs, and trying to stay as busy as I can. And I know I'm more busy than most people. I like actually have jobs for like 4 different people. So that's about it. I'm gonna freshen myself up, take a shower, try to finish what's left of this bowl, take care of Ebby, and I'll see you guys on the next one. You can find more of my blog at aloha.blogspot.com. Aloha. Bye.